Is he seriously expecting the House to believe that the manufacturers of these components do not trace them, do not track them, do not label them, do not identify them? I think the government knows exactly where those parts are going and exactly that they are enabling those F-35 jets to bomb Gaza and take part in acts of genocide.
But it is impossible to conclude that this is anything less than a genocide.
It is clear that the government of Benjamin Netanyahu is not listening to the minister's words. In the context of the slaughter and starvation that we are seeing in Gaza, the government's position is frankly not good enough.
It's quite simple. There is a genocide in Gaza being committed by the Israeli government. We are complicit in that genocide. We have the power to act, and we're not acting.
It's a disgrace that the Foreign Secretary isn't here, but unsurprising. Madam Deputy Speaker, the majority of the British public support a full arms embargo on Israel, yet this Labour government has continued to supply arms exports, including components for lethal F-35 fighter jets, enabling genocide.
I must take issue with the Minister when he said that it's people outside this place wearing badges and marches who aren't making a difference. What's the difference? The difference between members of the public wearing badges and marching is that's all they can do. Whereas ministers in a government can bring sanctions, end arms sales and hold the war criminal Netanyahu to account. So I ask the Minister this. Quite rightly, this government in this House has labelled Russia's actions in Ukraine as war crimes, and accordingly they brought in significant widespread sanctions. When will they do the same in relation to Israel? Because otherwise this reeks of double standards, and Netanyahu will see the minister and this government as a weak pushover and a joke.
Basil Caliscan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The International Red Cross chief has said that Gaza is worse than hell on earth. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, is it any wonder when children who have escaped bombs are now facing death because of starvation? The United Nations has said that 1 in 5 people in Gaza face starvation because of the blockade. Can I ask the Minister, Madam Deputy Speaker, does he agree with me that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is clearly incapable of addressing the starvation in Gaza? That's very clear now, and that Israel should immediately hand over any operation of aid to the United Nations.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for the question. I think I've been clear on the point, but yes, the United Nations should be back, able to deliver humanitarian aid in the principled way that they have been.
Shokrat Adam.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Ward Jalal was a 6-year-old Palestinian girl who last week crawled out of a burning school, leaving behind her mother and 2 siblings to burn to death. And the reason I mention Ward's name is because she was Palestinian. Last month, in the case of Al-Haq and the government, up to September 2024, 40,000 innocent Palestinian men, women and children like Ward and her family were killed. The government reviewed 413 of those cases, and out of the 413 they found one possible breach of international law, and that was the killing of the volunteers in the World Central Kitchen. Can I ask the Minister, does the government have any regard for children like Ward and Palestinian people in their concerns?
Madam Deputy Speaker, of course we have regard. Of course we have concerns for Palestinian people. The questions at issue in the assessment of risk are legal ones and complicated ones. And the reason they are complicated is because the cast of international humanitarian law ends up resting a great deal on what is in the mind of a commander when they make a decision. International humanitarian law is tightly constrained. It is therefore difficult to make conclusions about what is in the mind of a commander who will not share that thought with you. So that is why, when we make those determinations, we consider other limbs of international humanitarian law, not because we are saying that in all those cases it was proportional and necessary to the military objectives, but because where we cannot determine, you can look to other limbs of the assessment, and those limbs include the obligations on an occupying power, about aid being provided, and also the treatment of detainees. And those are easier tests to meet because they do not require knowing what is in the mind of a commander.
Now, I am planning to run this statement for a further 30 minutes, but members might like to think very carefully how many of their colleagues they wish to help get in and ask short questions and short responses, please. Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let us be short and frank then. I don't think for many of us in this House anymore it is complicated. Time has run out for ambiguity of action. Since the 20th of May, we've seen 22 more settlements. It is deliberately dangerous for people to access the aid. The IDF has declared the roads to the aid distribution centres as combat zones. We recognise that the Minister says they've raised concerns, that they have called for immediate independent investigations. These have not happened, not just in this incident, but repeatedly. The Minister won't tell us what he will do. It's on all our consciences to ask him to be clearer about that. So will he tell us what isn't on the table? Will he rule out things? He's telling us he's talking about future things. Will he rule out the immediate recognition of Palestine that many of us have been calling for? Will he rule out the sanctions that many of us have been calling out? Will he rule out the final abolition of the F-35 farce? Because if he does, at least we get some sense of where this is going.
Order. In statements, we need to have briefer questions. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I'll return to this House when I have further announcements.
Janta Ka Reporter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Parishioners in the Matlask benefice have raised over £3,000 to support the people of Gaza and were visited last year by a priest from Bethlehem who shared how this conflict is impacting those there. They hope for the return of the hostages and for peace for the Palestinian people. I won't ask him to repeat the answer to the question of when, but will he confirm to them that the tools he is considering using at the next step include sanctions against extremist government ministers and formally recognising a Palestinian state?
I want to pay tribute to the work of your constituents, and I know so many constituents, including mine in Lincoln, are doing so much to try and both keep these issues on people's minds and take steps by raising funds as well. I won't be drawn on what the further steps might be taken. We were clear in the leader's statement that they could include targeted sanctions, so you can assure your constituents that that remains under review.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Members have reached for the right words to describe what is being faced by the Palestinians. I think it's incredibly difficult within the constraints of parliamentary language and diplomatic language to convey that. I'm not going to go over any of the ground that other colleagues have, but does he agree with me that it is completely unacceptable on every level to pair aid with military objectives? And will he assure the House that in our future considerations as a government of where we go next with Israel, the unacceptability of those tactics is taken on board?
I want to thank my honourable friend from Gateshead who has raised these issues with me many times and is very focused on them. I completely agree with what he says. Aid must be delivered in a principled way. That is vital not just in the Middle East but across the entire world, and we take these issues very seriously and we raise them with force with the Israeli government.
Kirsty Blackman.
In 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years, none of us want to have to look back and say we could have done more. Yeah. As of December, there were 191 licences for export of military equipment to Israel. Less than half of those were for the IDF and for the Israeli government. What comfort does the Minister have that that military equipment that is going to Israel is not being used to expand settlements in the West Bank, is not being used by those civilian staff working at these aid centres, is not being used to worsen the situation for the Palestinian people?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for the important question. We take these issues very seriously. We have one of the toughest arms export licensing criteria and systems in the world, and we work very carefully to ensure that the words that I say and the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister say at this dispatch box are followed all the way through in every decision that we make. In some cases, it is absolutely obvious from the licence that they couldn't be used in the way that she describes. For example, components for a submarine can't be used in Gaza, but we do take enormous care over these questions.
Bel Ribeiro Addy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. An honourable friend from the other place reminded me of a conversation that she overheard me having with my honourable friend, the member for Coventry South, would have been October 2023. Israel had begun bombing the civilian population in the Gaza Strip, and my honourable friend asked, when will they say something? And as I often do, I said the first thing that came to my mind, and that is when they level it to the ground. And I have to ask the Minister, is this the change that we are waiting for at this stage? Because I've previously asked what our red lines are, and it seems that we have none. History will not look kindly on those who perpetuate genocide or those who assist it. And whether it's through the sale of arms or sheer inaction, does the Minister accept that this is now us? Now, the member for North West Hampshire pointed to actions that we might take, and I have to ask, why are these actions not good enough for the people of Palestine, and how many more people have to die before we do something?
Yeah. My honourable friend asks me if I accept, I think the honourable lady said, this is us. I don't accept this is us. We are in a very serious disagreement with the Israeli government about the conduct of the conflict. That disagreement has been ongoing. It is strongly felt. Their policy in relation to Gaza and the West Bank is not the British government's policy. Not only have I condemned it, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary have done so repeatedly. I hear the frustration of the House about further measures, but let us accept that the British and Israeli government disagree profoundly on this question, that the disagreement between us is deeply felt and British policy is as it is, not what the Netanyahu government is doing.
Caroline Vaden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Hundreds of my constituents have written to me expressing their desperation and horror at the hellish scenes coming out of Gaza, so I speak here on their behalf. It is quite clear that the Israeli government aspires to wipe Palestine off the map as they expand their settlement ambitions with impunity. They don't care that ministers in Whitehall are watching their statements. Until Palestine is recognised as a state, the dispossession of land and homes by Israel will continue. So why won't the government stand up now, alongside our allies Spain, Norway and Ireland, and recognise Palestine as a state?
Yeah.
I recognise the concern of many constituents across the country, including in Lincoln. We are obviously in close touch with, I was talking to my Spanish counterparts on Sunday. I was in Madrid with the Irish and the other nations she mentioned at the Madrid conference, with a whole set of states that have recognised a Palestinian state. And I recognise the desire right across this House, I think, for further steps in that area. What this House, I am sure, will press me on, whatever we do, is the continued horrors of Gaza. We are focused in everything that we do on trying to make an impact on the scenes that your constituents are seeing. We are considering these matters, but the question that we are focused on is trying to reduce the suffering in Gaza today.
Andrew Peggs.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the Minister's update for the House. But the Minister will know that the situation isn't just the horrors and inhumane violence of the Israeli government in Gaza, it is also the aggression we're seeing in the West Bank. I welcome the government's condemnation of the 22 new settlements and look forward to the words on the forced transfer from Palestinian villages that we are seeing this week. The Minister has described the Minister recognises the anger that this House feels and frustration. Could I ask him what more he would need to see happen before we take further action on sanctions against extremist ministers and action we need to see happen to recognise Palestine as part of the UN conference in coming weeks?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the 22 settlements are not only appalling, they are illegal. We have taken sanction steps. We have put in place sanctions against both individuals and organisations on the 20th of May. Clearly, that has not deterred Minister Smotrich and others from continuing to try and expand settlements in the West Bank. The viability of a two-state solution, of two states practically going to be able to live side by side, is being undermined, and we will continue to take action to try and to avert that.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister quite rightly called for an independent inquiry into Israel's behaviour in denying food, medicine and vital aid to the people of Gaza. In the same spirit, would he welcome an independent inquiry into the British government's policies in relation to F-35 jet parts, for example, because this seems to be becoming more and more mysterious. Yeah. Apparently they're sold into the global supply chain, but we have no control over what happens to them. They might end up in the hands of Israel, or they might not. Is he seriously expecting the House to believe that the manufacturers of these components do not trace them, do not track them, do not label them, do not identify them? I think the government knows exactly where those parts are going and exactly that they are enabling those F-35 jets to bomb Gaza and take part in acts of genocide. Does he not deserve an independent inquiry?
Madam Deputy Speaker, we have talked about these issues many times. They are in the High Court being discussed in a judicial review. At the moment, I do not see that this could be any further scrutinised and litigated, or what an independent inquiry on the position of the F-35 parts would achieve.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was very proud to join thousands of protesters surrounding Parliament today, demanding to know what this government's red line is. So, Minister, can you tell this House today Madam Deputy Speaker, can he tell this House what is his red line, and when will he stop arming Israel and stop F-35 bombers dropping bombs on schools and killing innocent children?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think I've addressed most of those substantive points already. We are clear in our position. We have set it out repeatedly, privately and publicly, and no doubt I will be back in this House shortly.
Vicky Slade.
Deputy Speaker, under the UK Strategic Export Licence criteria, licences are prohibited when there is a clear risk items would undermine peace and security, or under criteria 7, where the controlled items might be diverted for such uses. Can he confirm that export of all items, both with licences and those that sit outside the rules or have authorised exemptions, are being reviewed, so items like drones used for decoys and surveillance being used against civilians and aid convoys will fall under the restrictions, so these things do not go under the radar?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm going to hesitate in my answer just because there were quite a few clauses in the question and I don't want to get it wrong. The effect of what I have said in Parliament binds all of our export licences. There is not an asterisk or a footnote that allows some way around. This is a full-reaching approach which has been set out repeatedly in Parliament and has indeed been scrutinised by the Business Select Committee and indeed by the courts. There is no attempt to fudge the position here. It is as I have set out.
Louise Hay.
Can I recognise the Minister's personal dedication to this issue and his efforts in achieving a ceasefire? But it is impossible to conclude that this is anything less than a genocide. So on that basis, will he reflect the will of this House to the Foreign Secretary and to the Cabinet to impose immediately sanctions on Netanyahu and his genocidal regime?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I know my honourable friend, my right honourable friend, is committed to these issues. Determinations of genocides are for a competent court. I can confirm, as I did to the Liberal Democrat colleague, that we are considering further targeted sanctions in line with the three leaders' statement of recent weeks.
Ayub Khan.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Dr. Al-Najjar, along with 9 of his 10 children, were murdered when an Israeli bomb hit their home. All this happened whilst his wife, another doctor, served at Nasir Hospital. We all know and we've all seen the many thousands of men, women and children lined up in a cage for food, shot as if there's some sort of game, hunting game. We know also that the former President Biden's spokesman, Mr. Miller, said to Sky during an interview that there was war crimes. He had no doubt. But he did not say this, even though he was aware of this when Biden was in power. Does the minister feel that he finds himself in the same position? And if he does not, why does he not do what the thousands encircling this part of Parliament have done? Stop the arms to Israel.
Minister.
With respect, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I appreciate the Honourable Gentleman's commitment to these issues, it wasn't the badge or the protest that stopped the arms to Gaza, it was the Labour government. That was the effect of voting for a Labour government and having a Labour government. I hear the frustration of the House. I have set out what we have done so far. I have been clear that we will go further. The badge is nice, but action is what matters, and that is what the Labour government has done.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The President of the International Committee of the Red Cross has described the situation in Gaza today as worse than hell on earth. But the Minister has come to this House today with a message that is exactly the same as it was 2 weeks ago. He condemns the settlements, but settlement goods are still being sold in our shops. He supports a two-state solution, but he has not recognised a Palestinian state. He disagrees with the Israeli government, but he will not sanction their extremist ministers. It is clear that the government of Benjamin Netanyahu is not listening to the minister's words. In the context of the slaughter and starvation that we are seeing in Gaza, the government's position is frankly not good enough. When will there be further action?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I wouldn't want the House to have the impression that in the period of recess that the Foreign Office, its ministers and the whole of the government were not focused on these issues. We made statements on Sunday. We are working closely with our partners. We made a clear, on I think it was the 19th of May, made a clear statement to the Israeli government that there would be further consequences should the situation not improve, and I will return to this House when I am in a position to make further announcements.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can the Minister tell me how many more children must die before the government finally bans the sales and the export of all UK arms, including component parts, to the murderous Netanyahu's government?
Hear, hear.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it's... I have seen children in Gaza. My department was able to get 2 of them out of Gaza last week. I understand the frustration of the House, but do not give the impression that what this government is doing is not deeply focused on the fate of children in Gaza. I hear the benches opposite laughing at 2 children getting out of Gaza. Of course, it is nowhere near enough. We hear right across the House the reports, but we are doing everything that we can, and we will continue to do so.
Jacob Collier.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister made reference to the joint statement with France and Canada on the 20th of May, and things have got worse since that point. Food distribution has been blocked entirely, and hunger is being used as a weapon, and innocent Palestinians are paying the price. So if that statement is to hold up, can the Minister say what action he is going to be taking with France and Canada?
I clearly can't bind the French and Canadian governments from this dispatch box, but we were clear that targeted sanctions would follow amongst other actions if there was not an improvement, and I can commit to the House that remains under review, and I will return to this place to provide a further announcement when I'm able.
Adnan Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister failed today to answer the question asked by the member for Argyle. Does his government believe Israel is committing a genocide? Yes or no?
It's a long-standing position. It's for a competent court to determine.
Laura Kirksmith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The approach of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation flies in the face of every established principle of humane and effective aid delivery. As has become quickly apparent, the head of the organisation has resigned, and at least 42 Palestinians have been killed for simply trying to feed their starving families. This is an affront on all of us, on basic principles of human dignity and respect. Does the Minister agree that there has to be full accountability for these atrocities?
Yeah. My honourable friend was an aid worker. She understands better than most the vital importance of these principles, not just in the Middle East, but right across the world. And I join with her and the Secretary-General in her cause.
Nadia Whitting.
Madam Deputy Speaker, men, women and children in Gaza don't care that our government has profound disagreement with the Israeli government, and the Israeli government doesn't care either because they're continuing to act with impunity. It's quite simple. There is a genocide in Gaza being committed by the Israeli government. We are complicit in that genocide. We have the power to act, and we're not acting. What are we waiting for? Why have we not sanctioned Israel for its war crimes? Why have we not implemented a full arms embargo, including on F-35 fighter jet parts? Why have we not recognised the state of Palestine? We can do it because we did it we did it for Ukraine. Why are we not treating Palestinian lives as equal?
Good point. I thank my honourable friends for the question. She mentioned Ukraine. Our actions have consequences. The F-35 programme, and I understand that the House may disagree about the position the government has set out about the global spares pool, but it is the strongly held view of this government, including the Ministry of Defence, that we cannot stop sales to the global spares pool without harming the defence of NATO allies. At a moment of critical vulnerability for European security, the government has to act responsibly across all of its interests. Where F-35 parts are going directly to Israel, they are suspended. But we want the F-35 programme to continue, not only for reasons of our own national security, but that of our allies, including Ukraine.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the horrific historic tragedy of the Palestinian people, and particularly the people of Gaza, is that they're at the mercy of two sets of extremists. The extremists of Hamas, but also the extremists of this Israeli government. National Security Minister Ben-Gvir said giving aid to Gaza is, and I quote, a mistake that delays our victory. Finance Minister Smotrich said, we are liberating Gaza and settling it. The Minister talks about further steps. Surely now is the time for us to sanction those individuals in the Israeli government to prove that we do not endorse such extremism.
Let me be clear from this dispatch box, we do not endorse such extremism. I won't speculate about sanctions from this dispatch box, but it has been clear in the leader's statement that should the situation not improve, targeted sanctions will be considered.
Clive Betts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate, as the Minister of State, my right honourable friend is limited what he can say today from the dispatch box. But will he agree will convey back to the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister the extreme disquiet and unease across the House and particularly on these benches about the current position the government's adopting, and say to the Prime Minister, please come back next week and update the government's position and tell us that more sanctions are going to be considered and a recognition of the Palestinian state is also now on the agenda and going to be forwarded.
I thank my honourable friend for the question. The whole government, from the Prime Minister down, knows the extent of concern. I'm not sure that they necessarily watch all of these appearances, but don't be under any illusion that the whole government understands the strength of feeling in this House, in our constituencies, and right across the country about these issues.
If this situation could not get any worse, we now have damning reports that Israeli fire is killing Palestinians trying to access aid at militarised distribution centres not sanctioned by the UN. It is a complete disregard for human life. Does the Minister agree that enough is enough and is now not the time to take immediate, stronger and further action against the Israeli government?
I share my honourable friend's concern about events in the Rafah crossing and beyond. The scenes from Gaza are intolerable, and I will return to this House when I'm in a position to do so.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's clear that this House has no confidence in the government's handling of the F-35 programme. So can I ask the Minister this? What is to stop the government withdrawing from the programme and then selling bilaterally the parts to countries excluding Israel, ensuring that we are compliant with international humanitarian law and no component manufactured in the UK is being used to bomb innocent civilians in Gaza?
Unilateral withdrawal from the F-35 programme would have the effect of fully suspending the programme at a time it is required for global peace and security.
Zara Sultana.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a disgrace that the Foreign Secretary isn't here, but unsurprising.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the majority of the British public support a full arms embargo on Israel, yet this Labour government has continued to supply arms exports, including components for lethal F-35 fighter jets, enabling genocide, and those are not used in Ukraine, so that needs to stop being said at the dispatch box. The government has also defended this indefensible policy in court, claiming that it has seen no evidence of genocide. The evidence is overwhelming. We know it, the Minister knows it, the government knows it. So does the Minister understand that through the decisions he makes every single day, he is personally complicit in genocide?
I'd like to address the point about F-35s not being used in Ukraine. The importance of the F-35 programme to Ukraine is that the deployment of F-35s allows a redeployment of F-15s, which are used in the defence of Ukraine. We cannot, convenient though it would be to the House, you cannot divide up defence and national security in that way. I am confident in what I say from the dispatch box. The F-35 programme helps protect Ukraine.
Calvin Bailey.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome the Minister's statement and his efforts, but he must sense our frustration at the inability to arrest the situation that we're seeing in Gaza and the occupied territories. In the past few days, we've seen 58 people killed and many more injured in and around the GHF aid distribution sites. And those of us that have participated in UN operations in the past know that this should have been foreseen. It confirms all of our fears about what happens when humanitarian principles are disregarded. And let's be clear that Israel is continually and deliberately undermining the institutions of international law, and we need to respond more strongly. Israel isn't listening. Please, when will my right honourable friend announce sanctions on Israel's extremist government?
I want to thank my gallant friends who served in the RAF for a long time, as well as in the United Nations. These issues are desperate. We have taken, as he knows, actions against Israeli settlers, against extremists, and we've been clear if the Israeli government does not change course, there will be further measures, including targeted sanctions.
Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's clear to us all that the actions of the Israeli government are morally abhorrent, and I welcome the further sanctions that the Minister announced, the Secretary of State announced 2 weeks ago. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, I plead with the Minister, we need to go further. We need to go further on sanctions. We need to consider trade measures. Like the Right Honourable Gentleman from Kenilworth and Southern, I too now believe it's time to recognise the Palestinian state. I was willing to accept the government's position on it, but I cannot any longer. Please, Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg the Minister to come back to this House extremely soon, tomorrow, next week, with further concrete measures.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I heard the force of my honourable friend's intervention, and I recognise the feeling right across the House of the need to see the situation in Gaza change, and that is an urgency felt by the government.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is increasingly accepted that Israel's military operation in Gaza, having forcibly displaced and starved millions of Palestinians, having killed tens of thousands, amounts to a genocide. The latest feature of that is its aid distribution process, which today doesn't deliver aid. It is a dehumanising death trap that sees a child in a tent receiving treatment being shot in the head through the side of the tent. For the UK to end its condemnation of its complicity, it must pull all the levers to stop Israel's military action immediately. There needs to be a shift from condemnation and demands for Israel's compliance with international humanitarian law to a clear, unequivocal commitment that if Israel does not comply, that it will be forced to comply by whatever means. Will he make that commitment?
My honourable friend has got a long commitment to these issues, and we were discussing them through the recess. Clearly, the situation in relation to aid in Gaza remains absolutely desperate. We condemn the scenes. We did so on Sunday, we have been clear in our views about the new aid mechanism, but let us not escape the fundamental position of the British government, which is we oppose this operation in Gaza. We are calling on all sides to return to a ceasefire. That is what we are working towards.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think that the Minister has heard today from colleagues right across this House the frustration that we've kind of heard and the contradictory things we've kind of heard today about from the Minister in response to questions, that there will be a change when there is a change, and there'll be new steps when there's new steps available, when there's this change. But in the same statement is outlining how Israel's newly introduced measures for aid delivery are inhumane, foster desperation and endanger civilians. Surely the actions of this week show that there is yet again another change, and now is the time for action and changing in our response.
I don't think what I've said has been incoherent, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the 19th of May, we announced leader-level statements setting out our position. On the 20th of May, the Foreign Secretary came to the dispatch box to announce concrete new measures. I hear that the House would have liked me to come to this afternoon to announce further measures. We have been clear at the level of our Prime Minister, alongside our allies, both at 3 with France and Canada and with 26 partners, of the need for change. I hear from the House that they would like further measures announced this afternoon. I have committed to return when I'm in a position to do so.
Final question, Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I must take issue with the Minister when he said that it's people outside this place wearing badges and marches who aren't making a difference. What's the difference? The difference between members of the public wearing badges and marching is that's all they can do, whereas ministers in a government can bring sanctions, end arms sales and hold the war criminal Netanyahu to account. So I ask the Minister this. Quite rightly, this government in this House has labelled Russia's actions in Ukraine as war crimes, and accordingly they brought in significant widespread sanctions. When will they do the same in relation to Israel? Because otherwise this reeks of double standards, and Netanyahu will see the Minister and this government as a weak pushover and a joke.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let me be clear. I was not seeking to disparage the efforts of activists or protesters, but when the honourable gentleman asks when will we suspend arms to Gaza, we have suspended arms to Gaza. I hear the frustration of the House, but the Labour government took steps. I am proud of the steps we have taken. I hear the frustration to go further, but let us not pretend that this government has done nothing. It is deeply distressing, the scenes in Gaza. We have been clear, as I have been clear this afternoon, that we will take further steps if they do not change. But we have taken measures and we will continue to do so, Madam Deputy Speaker.